right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the County of Los Angeles Citizen Redistricting Commission Special Public Meeting. Today is October 26, 2021, and the time is 6:32 p.m. We will now call the special meeting to order. As a reminder to the public, this public hearing is being recorded and live streamed to youtube.com/LA County Redistricting. The link to the recording will also be posted and accessible through the Los Angeles County Redistricting website. If at any time any members of the public has any technical difficulties, please message me or put it into the Q&A and we can work towards fixing the issue. I will now take the roll. As a reminder, commissioner names will be called in a rotating alphabetical order by last name. Commissioners, please be prepared to unmute your mic and respond when your name is called. Commissioner Jean Franklin.
Present.
Commissioner David Holtzman, excused. Commissioner Mary Kenny.
Present.
Co-Chair Daniel Maeda.
Present.
Commissioner Mark Mendoza.
Present.
Commissioner Apolonio Morales.
Present.
Commissioner Nelson Obregon.
Present.
Commissioner Priscilla Orpanella Segura.
Present.
Commissioner Haile Soto.
Present.
Commissioner Saida Soto.
Present.
Commissioner Brian Stetcher.
Present.
Commissioner John Vento.
Present.
Co-Chair Carolyn Williams, excused. Commissioner Dorina Wong.
Present.
Thank you. I will now turn the agenda over to Co-Chair Maeda.
Thank you, Ty. Good evening and welcome to this, the first of probably 3 meetings in a row we're having this week as we prepare to select maps for public review. First item on the agenda for today's special meeting is approval of the agenda. I know it says co-chair Carolyn Williams there, but she is excused tonight, so I'm handling this matter. And as far as I know, there are no changes. And if there are no changes on the agenda, then the agenda will be deemed approved. The next item. There's no public, general public comments for this meeting because it's a special meeting. So if you do want to make a public comment, you'll have to make it with regard to specific agenda items on our agenda, numbered agenda items. You can indicate that on the Q&A, I believe, as well as submit written comments on the form that's linked there.
Excuse me, Co-Chair Maeda. The Q&A will only be for taking names to make public comment on agenda items. Actual written comments that people want to submit, we would like them to use the link, and Ty will provide it in the chat box as well for the attendees.
That's correct.
If they write comments in the Q&A, we do not capture that, so they should put it on the link.
Thank you.
So Ty, do you want to go over how to make a public comment for the public?
Of course. So if members of the public who are interested in making a live public comment, you may submit in the Q&A your name, your affiliated organization, if any, and the agenda item you would like to make a public comment on. I would like to stress that's very important just because we do have a few agenda items on today's agenda. When you are called to make your public comment, you will be prompted to unmute your mic, or you'll be able to unmute your mic, and if you are comfortable, you may share your video as well. If you are participating via phone, press *9 to raise your hand. And once called upon, press *6 to unmute and speak. Each person will have one opportunity to speak for 1 minute per discussion or agenda item. And when you begin making your comment, please share your name and any affiliation you may have. Again, as a reminder, additional written public comments, including public comments for specific submitted maps or any communities of interest, can be submitted to the public comment form for the agenda item. And you can find the link in the chat or on the CRC website as well.
This was just a general caveat that we wanted to make as we move into the next agenda item for all the commissioners. And that is the way the software works now that people are not starting as a default with the existing supersorial district. The numbering system on the supersorial districts are sort of at random. So you may want to be aware when Pretty starts doing your agenda item that the numbers may be arbitrary. What they call North County, they may give it number supersorial district number 3. It's currently number 5. So just be aware of that. when you finally pick your options, you can ask the demographer to renumber the subsoil districts in the way that you think most appropriate. So I just want you all to be aware of that as a caveat going in.
And the numbering, as we will see as we go through tonight, becomes potentially very important. So that's why the caveat. Okay, so a series of action / discussion items is up for tonight. We'll start with 4A, which is an update and a discussion about the maps that have been submitted by the public, as well as some commissioner maps. We, among other things tonight, we'll consider whether to invite certain map drawers to appear at one of our meetings to describe or to discuss, explain their particular maps. I think for this item 4A, we're going to start with a presentation by our demographic consultant, Arkbridge.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, everyone.
Reggie, can you put it on the enlarged screen size so that the public can see the full graphic? You almost had it, bottom right, yeah.
Presentation mode, yeah.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, everyone. Today, I'm going to present you an initial analysis of the submitted plans as of today. The number of plans that were submitted so far as of today, we have 23 plans that have been submitted. 2 plans were submitted using the non-RDU Esri software. So we are going to process them, and they were submitted using external software. 17 plans were submitted by citizens. 6 were submitted by commissioners. 1 by Commissioner Mary Kenny, 2 by Commissioner Stetcher, and 3 by Commissioner Holzman. So what today I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, we have evaluated 7 plans, and I'm going to go through those and then come back as to how we will evaluate them. So with this, I'm going to share. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your list of maps.
No.
You may have to unshare and then share again the screen you would like to for everyone to see.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if let me stop sharing this. Okay, can you see my PDF yet or no?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. So this is plan number 1 that was submitted, and I'm just going to go through how we processed it. So we have a base map, a map of the plan, the way the districts are. Then we have the maximum deviation, which is 8.92. Then we have all the 5 districts, the total population in each one of those, the deviation and the deviation percent. Then we also have a population by district, and we have percent population for each Latino, white, Black, and Asian. And down below, we have a chart which shows the major races. and it racial and ethnic categories. So, and the districts are colored in these colors. So the first one would be for District 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that is the ethnic and racial information by district.
Preeti, before you go to the next slide, what are the black and white striped lines if they're not the districts?
The black and white stripe lines are the current districts, and the colored ones are the proposed districts.
Thank you.
On this next slide, we have a total population. We have voting age population, and we have citizen voting age population. It's by district, so you have the category, then the percentage right underneath it. And then we have the totals for each of those categories, which is total population, voting age population, and citizen voting age population. We also have down here the number of splits by cities, CSAs, city/CSA, LA City neighborhood councils, and the COI models that we had generated. So this particular plan splits 23 cities/CSAs. It splits 37 neighborhood councils, 22 COIs in our COI A model, 19 in our COI B model, and 20 in our COI C model. And
Preeti,
then
can I ask?
Long has a question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just trying to understand the difference between the voting age population versus the citizen voting age population. And
yeah, voting age population comes from the Public Law 94-171 data set that we were waiting for the Bureau of Census to release. So total population and voting age population come from that data source. And that is, as we refer it to as 100% count, it's not a sample. But citizen voting age population comes from the American Community Survey from the Bureau of Census, and that is based on a sample data set.
Preeti, what is the acronym CSAS?
CSA stands for City Statistical Areas that the LA County uses.
Thank you.
We have a hand for Commissioner Stetcher.
Yeah.
Thank you. When was the citizen voting age population data collected? How old are those data?
Okay, that data is, we give it a timestamp of 2019, but typically it's over a period of 4-5 years.
And the total number of elements at the bottom, there are 88 cities and CSAS. Could you tell us what the total numbers are for cities, neighborhood councils? I remember the COIs are in the 20s, but not the others.
Okay. I will go back to my other slide in just a little bit, but there are 348 cities in the county of Los Angeles. There are 99 neighborhood councils in the city of LA. And you already know about the COIs. There are about 27, 26, and 28 in different models.
Actually, if I may add a point of clarification, there are only 88 cities in Los Angeles County. Los Angeles City is so large that it's been divided into smaller CSAs. And so Preeti actually posted on our website a breakdown of the CSAs. I can look that up if people want to see it, but that's why the number is larger. They've broken them down into smaller components.
Can I ask just a follow-up question to between the voting age and citizen voting age? Do you know, Priti, which ones we would use for the Voting Rights Act? Because there's a big difference between those two
Okay.
sometimes.
Yeah. For redistricting, when we create the districts, we have to use total population. And that is what we use. Now, when we are looking at minority majority districts, that is the time when you could look at voting age population or citizen voting age population. But as far as the districts go, we use total population.
Correct, but I'm trying to figure out, for instance, if you just look at the first, like District 3, the difference between the voting age population is 59.2% and the citizen voting age is 39.5%. That's a huge difference in terms of what one would consider a majority minority district, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
Now,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so I'm just trying to determine what we use to figure out, do we use then the citizen voting age? Because that's more important in terms of reflecting the true majority, if it's a majority minority district, or do we go by the voting age population?
Okay, that is something, that Bruce Adelson, the consultant, he has been talking about using both the data sets, but when it comes to voting, when it comes to representation, then you can think of voting age population because everybody is being represented. But when you think of actual voting purposes, then you could look at citizen voting age population because then you're only concerned about people who would vote. So there are two aspects. One is representation. That is where you take everybody into account. But the other one is when you're more interested in who can vote, then you would look at CVAP.
Okay, thank you. So we can use either, I guess, to deter, depending on each commissioner's interpretation. Anyway, I will follow up with Bruce. Thank you.
Commissioner Kenny, then Co-Chair Maeda.
Thank you. I'm still confused on the splits. You have the numerator shown, but you don't have the denominator. And you have lumped together cities and CSAs, but Gayla implied that the CSAs are only for the city of Los Angeles. I guess I'm wondering exactly, is it cities, is it all CSAs for the county? Is that what that box represents?
Okay, let me clarify here that we are working with the data layers that were provided to us with by the County of Los Angeles, and in their layer, and I can open it up and show it to you, they have 348 cities / CSAs, which they call consolidated statistical areas. And we are using that. And LA neighborhood councils, there are 99 of those, and we are using that as a layer.
So Priti, if I may, this is on our website. There's a description of what the CSAs are. And what you'll see here is a list of all the CSA names that are in the data set. And the intention is to try to keep cities together. So you'll see the 88 cities. And then when you get down here, you'll start seeing Los Angeles, Adams, Normandy. And if you go through, you'll see they've broken Los Angeles into other smaller statistical areas.
Okay,
And
so the city
what you look to.
CSAs is for the entire county, but the neighborhood councils is only for the city of Los Angeles.
Well, it also includes the over 110 or so unincorporated areas. So if you look after Los Angeles, you'll see unincorporated areas. And when you add up the 87 cities plus 115 unincorporated areas, and then the breakdown within LA City, you get around 300 and some of these, if that
Thank you.
helps to explain it. And it's on our website if you want to go back and look at it more carefully.
Ty, am I next?
Yes, Co-Chair.
So actually, there's some confusion. So CSAS includes individual cities, 88 of them. But with one of those cities, Los Angeles, there are a whole bunch more CSAS included, right? So the total number is 87 plus, I don't know how many are in the city of Los Angeles. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so you
Pretty-
have 87 cities plus LA City is broken down to, I don't know how many it is offhand, but let's say it's another 100. And then you have over 100 unincorporated areas.
But
I'll tell you exactly the number that I have, which includes unincorporated as well as cities. So the data set that I'm using, it has 348 CSAs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the LA neighborhood councils, which includes the unincorporated area, whatnot, that the total number for that is 99.
The neighborhood councils are only limited to the city of Los Angeles, though. They're not
Yes.
unincorporated areas.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, now, district drawings, when we draw the 5 districts, we have to use total population, not voting population, not citizens, whatever, total population. Okay, that's when we draw the districts. For Voting Rights Act purposes, though, we're supposed to look at the citizens voting age population. I'm pretty sure that is what the guidance we have from Bruce Adelson was. So to Commissioner Wong, it's not a matter of commissioner discretion or whatever. That is what we're supposed to be doing with regards to Voting Rights Act analysis, is my understanding. Now, I mean, Gayla, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, that is my understanding as well.
And mine as well. There is a place for consideration of voting age population, but there's no. We absolutely also need to consider CVAP. So and the differences between voting age population and CVAP may inform part of the decisions, but you absolutely need to include CVAP when you're just evaluating compliance.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Vento?
Can you put that map back up with the data, not the map, the data with the voting ages that we were just looking at? And then Dan and Gayla and everybody, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So when we first draw, we're going to start with the total population first. Then we go with CVAP. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we say, I'm just in terms of like moving this down, like, so we see a couple maps, we like them, we check that total population, then we go look at CVAP and see how close or they are, correct?
Well, and if I may just sort of refer to a point that Bruce Edelson had made last week, and that is in other states, that if they only relied on total population, they may have thought they had created a majority minority district. When they then actually looked at CVAP, they realized that there are many individuals who were not voting, and so therefore they really hadn't created a majority minority population that would have been able to choose a supervisorial or candidate of their choice, if that helps. So, there's a little bit of human judgment that has to enter into when you look at both the CVAP and the VAP to sort of understand what's going on and make your judgment calls. And we'll be having Dr. Katz run your options and your final maps to ensure there are no issues in terms of racially polarized voting as well as another check and balance.
So one more time, I just want, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it's most important that you all get your questions answered in terms of what's on these slides, because she's going to go through this with all 5 of the districts that were drawn. And she has 7 of these maps to show you tonight. So these are good questions so you know what's on here. And then I think it'll become easier as you begin to look at the rest of the maps. I think Commissioner Franklin, your hand was up.
No, my hand isn't up.
Mine is.
Our council is wanting to make a statement.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to also remind folks that your task is a holistic one. So you are also looking at the shapes. You also are looking at the communities of interest. And so you do not think you have tunnel vision about CVAP. That is a mistake. It is just one of many factors. And so make sure you're paying attention to all the factors. And we have the statutory factors in order that we need to pay attention to. So I just want to remind you about the broader picture.
Pretty?
Yeah, all I want to say is the total population is what you look at in the first go. You look at VAP and CVAP only if there is a question of minority majority district.
There aren't more questions of clarification. Pretty, why don't you now keep going through the remaining ones, because you'll get into a rhythm as you see for each one of these districts. She's provided this template of data and information.
And we do have a hand from Commissioner Stetcher.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was hard to see, Brian. Commissioner Stetcher.
We didn't design the background for the hands to show up. I hate to do this, but the other consideration here is, I think, that the analysis that Katz and Edelman did not find evidence of racially polarized voting in previous supervisorial districts, which to some extent lessens the importance of that element, I think, is the way they indicated in our analysis. We still want to look at it, but it is not controlling the way it would be if they had found polarized voting historically. Is that a fair interpretation, Holly?
Yes. I don't want to say it's a caveat, but as Bruce mentioned, you nevertheless pay attention to VAP and CVAP, but it's not as controlling as if you had found evidence of racially polarized voting, but it's still a factor.
Commissioner Morales?
Yeah, I was just going to add, they said strong, weak argument, but an argument nonetheless. And so we have to look at all the different aspects of this.
So I will go back to my presentation. All right, so we were talking about this. And now I would like to show you the maps, district by district maps. So here we have the total population, the deviation, and the deviation percent. And then we have a graph here which shows the population by major races. And we have 3 categories. We have total pop showing in blue. We have VAP showing in red, and we have CVAP showing in green. And this shows where your district 1 is. And the little red box shows where we are zoomed in. And here, these are the percentages for total pop, VAP, CVAP by race for district 1. the same thing we have done for each of the districts. So we have the shape of the district and the same information, and the reference map would tell you which part of the county we are looking at. Then we have District 3. So here you can look at it that apparently it's a majority Latino district, and you look at VAP, but when you look at CVAP, then maybe not. Now, this is District 4, and similar information is presented here. And then we have District 5, which is not a majority district, but definitely a Latino plurality district. So this is what we have for each plan that is submitted.
Pretty.
Sorry.
What about District 2? Did you show District 2? Can you show it again, please? Thank you.
Commissioner Franklin, be aware that how the districts are numbered may not relate to the current District 2. The numbers may be somewhat random, and I see Commissioner Stetcher's hand is up.
Thanks. Pretty, in calculating citizen voting age population, it looks like these numbers don't add up to 100%. It looks like you used as the denominator the total population. I'm trying to sort of interpret them because they don't actually reflect the percentage of any group who might vote if there was an election in that district, because they don't add up to 100.
Let's open it up again. So they are CVAP here. I'll have to check how we are doing the percentage, but the percentage is coming from these numbers over here, which are the total population, total citizen voting age population.
Would you please check it? Because on first glance, they don't seem to add up to 100.
Sure, we would check it. I can check it right now, actually.
Right, so perhaps the denominator is not the right denominator.
Yeah, we can look into it, and I can check that, yeah.
Okay, because we'll have more opportunities to look at these, and you can continue to go through the others that you're ready to present on.
Sure. Okay, let me share the next one.
I do want to know, Commissioner Franklin, did you want to see the geographic area on that one that was labeled District 2, or would have been the geographic area that sort of approximate where 2 is today?
The geographic area.
Yeah, but this is something which is why we had that earlier caveat, Pretty. So if you go back to your first example, let's look at the overall map, and let's look at what the number is that approximates where the current Citizen Road District 2 is, to allow Commissioner Franklin to see how this works.
So here, if you look at this, 1 is this district, 2 is this. So the person who created this map, they just, this is like a random numbering scheme.
So Commissioner Franklin, I think you're more interested in 3 or 5 that they have labeled. So maybe you'd have to look at both of those.
Oops. Yeah, 5 and 3.
Yeah. So I want
maybe a portion of 4 too.
And the public to realize that people may have numbered the districts in any order. They do not necessarily reflect the current geographic configuration of the 5 districts.
Thank you, Gayla.
So this is 3.
So with
This
that,
is
Commissioner
4.
Franklin, if it goes back to 3, you can see it starts in Long Beach and it goes north. If you go back to 3, pretty. Just to give your bearings, it includes Catalina Island, it includes San Pedro, Long Beach, and then it works its way north. And then if you wanted to show her 5, we can go on to the next map. And so that's more your Palos Verdes, it goes along the seaside communities and then inland from there. So it looks like it's a combination overlap of what the current subrural District 2 is. Does that help you, Commissioner Franklin? All right.
So now I'm going to share the next one. This is submission number 2.
We're
And
seeing
it's-
your, I'm sorry, we're seeing your desktop, not the O2.
Okay, let me do something else then.
Pretty, just open it on your computer, then share your screen.
Yeah. So I'm not sharing anything right now. So let me go back and.
While we're waiting, can I just ask a question for clarification about the process? I'm wondering, so is the expectation that Preeti will go through all 22 or even 24 maps through this process of comparing them all? I'm just wondering, you know, if that's the process we're going through and then discuss them.
So Pretty is prepared to share with you this more detailed analysis on 7 of the maps. And so over the course of the 3 evenings, you should probably look at about 7 to 10 maps per night. And then later, we're going to talk about tonight a little bit about criteria that could be used to evaluate the maps. And she'll give you a little presentation on some initial scoring they've done so you can compare them in a more holistic way. So it's a little bit detailed, but we want to make sure that all the commissioners had appreciation for what maps have been developed, because as you talk about them, you're going to be referring to 001, or you may start calling it based on the group that submitted the map. And I
Can
think
you
as
see my
as
screen?
each one, you'll get into a rhythm.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the same information is now presented for submission number 2. So we have the map. We have total population deviation percent. Then we have total population, voting age, citizen voting age. And this is something, you know, that we talked about in the previous submission. So we have 41 cities, CSAs, which were split. Then we have neighborhood councils that were split, and the COI models that we had developed, which were split. And this is district by district map. And we have the same information. And you can see different maps and the way they have drawn the districts.
Pretty, could you slow down a little bit as you scroll through those things? Because I just can't focus on it that quickly. Thank you.
Sure. Let me go back and start from District 1. It happens to be a Latino majority district in every sense. And the graph also tells you.
Commissioner Kenny, if I may, I think you're also trying to get the geographic bearings. Is that helpful?
I have a question and my electronic hand is not working.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Mendoza.
Thank you. It's actually back to what you had said, Gayla. When I guess after we review or Pretty presents these 7 maps today, somebody's going to talk about the manner in which we may want to evaluate these, and also some evaluation that's taken place as well.
So I do think you need to talk about how to evaluate them. Plus, these are sort of hot off the press because Pretty has been analyzing, ArcBridge has been analyzing them over the weekend and right up until this meeting. They'll all be available on the website and with this meeting, so you can go through more casually and look at them and enlarge them. But the thought tonight, Commissioner Mendoza, was to sort of show the 7 maps, get you familiar with how to read them. Talk a little later about criteria of how you might want to evaluate them. And then Pretty does have some thoughts about how they might score them to help you in this process.
Actually, I want to get into that soon.
Yeah.
That's going to be very, very helpful. And I recognize a lot of work has gone into what we're seeing now. And as Commissioner Kenny was saying, that this is moving pretty fast for me. And so I want to make sure that, I'm understanding the totality of how we're going to go about this. And if now's the time to do certain things or not certain things, meaning say certain things. So I'll wait to hear what you just talked about, Gayla. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, this is to get you grounded on the different ways that people have been thinking about the 5 successorial districts. And again, the numbering system on the districts, ignore the numbering and really focus on the geographic area.
Yes, because Gayla, when I was reviewing the maps, I did see the numbering systems were much different. However, I had to focus on the geographical areas. But at the end, before Pretty leaves and finishes, I'd like to know if we can look at as well Commissioner Kenny and Commissioner Stetter's maps. Is that too soon to review their maps in comparison to the maps that she's reviewing now, the initial maps that were submitted by the public?
So Pretty, I don't think you've had a chance to evaluate this because they were just posted yesterday. I know you received them a little bit later.
Yeah.
Tell
you what, I'll just go through this plan and then I will not show the plans anymore. I will get into how to evaluate them, how to make sense out of all these plans, which are now we are seeing. There are 23 of those, and how do we choose? So let me just go through this one and then I'll go back to the evaluation criteria and the model that we have been thinking of. Okay. So let's go through this and then I will show you the evaluation factors that we have been thinking about. So here, everyone has come up with different districts and different look and feel of them. And then here, and with this, I'm going to end this and go back to the evaluation criteria that we have been working with.
So Co-Chair Maeda, if she goes on to the criteria, that's going to change the order of our agenda with going from 4A to 4C. Is that all right with you if we change the order?
No, actually, I would like to stick with the order because its issue has been raised about the numbering. And so I think it's appropriate to talk about that next. We could leave open the 2A or the 4A discussion in terms of not making, decisions about anything at this point. But I guess one question is, do we need to take public comment on the 4A before we move on to 4B?
My recommendation on that, co-chair, is that you do take public comment. There may be folks sitting here that only want to comment on 4A, and this respects their time that they can get their comment in before any decision is made. That's my recommendation.
Any objections to that? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open to public comment then on just specifically on agenda item 4A. Ty?
Okay, so just very quickly, as a reminder for members of the public who are interested in making a public comment, all you will need to do is put into the Q&A your name and the specific agenda item you would like to make a public comment on. Each person will have one opportunity to speak for 1 minute per discussion and agenda item. I have also put it in the chat, a link to the public comment form for those who would like to just submit a public comment, not necessarily live. With that, we do have a few in line for this. So let me prepare that. So we first have Stuart Waldman with Vika. Stuart, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you are comfortable, you will have you can share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Thank you. Stuart Waldman, San Fernando Valley Redistricting Coalition. Appreciate the process. I do have to say that the CVAP numbers for our map, which is 004, are wrong. And so I'm not really sure what numbers are, and I'm seeing that other people feel that way about their maps as well. Our coalition asked the San Fernando Valley be kept whole. There've been a lot of maps that decimate the valley, cut it into 3 different districts. As it is, we're barely represented with 2 members. One of our supervisors comes to the valley once a month. Another one's been great for us, but doesn't share the same issues that we have, doesn't live the same traffic or heat or anything else. The San Fernando Valley has never had its own district in the history of this county. There's no reason not to do it because it can be done. And we ask that you keep the San Fernando Valley whole in its own district. And thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Stuart. Next, we have Lucy Demirijan of City of South Pasadena. Lucy, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you're comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the City of South Pasadena. The City Council is in strong support of Model B of the COI, which includes the city with the San Gabriel Valley, as it has established relationships with these cities and continues to work with them on issues of regional significance and mutual concern, including housing, homelessness, transportation, water, and the environment. Further, we suggest including the cities of Glendale and Burbank in the district maps, as these cities also share common interests with the San Gabriel Valley region. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Next, we have Jessica Panduro. Jessica, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you're comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comments.
Hello, good evening, commissioners. My name is Jessica Paduro. I'm speaking on behalf with Inner City Struggle. I'm a community organizer. I'm here in support of the People's Blocks map that we submitted. This map really represents the east side with the work that we have been doing under Board of Supervisors District 1, sorry, a little sick. Through time, we have seen that this district has really supported our work in ensuring that we extend tenant protection to our community. Our community, due to the pandemic, was impacted highly with housing, a lot of rent debt, and this district has really been in support of moving that work forward with the east side, for our communities of interest, really protecting our community. So I really ask you all to see the People's Block map under Supervisor District 1 that really represents the east side and the work that we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next, we have Chris Rowe. Chris, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself. And if you're comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Hi, it's Chris Rowe. I would like to be able to say that I had submitted that San Fernando Valley should be kept whole. I sent in a document where I used the city software. If you use the Mulholland boundary for the city of Los Angeles, it's about 1.4 million in the city. And again, 99 neighborhood councils for the city of LA is correct. But I would want to include the unincorporated areas. For example, I live in the very west side of the San Fernando Valley, and right next to me is unincorporated West Hills, which is in the supervisor's district. And it's actually right where Council District 5 and Council District 3 are divided. So because my time is short, I support keeping the San Fernando Valley whole, and that you have greater Hispanic populations and things in downtown East LA and other areas, and they really need that representation there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we have Dina Fisher. Dina, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself and share your video if you're comfortable. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment. Okay. Dina, whenever you are ready, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, my name is Dina. I'm a member of the Chatsworth Lake Manor Town Council. We're strongly in support of map 010 for some very specific reasons. Our community has spent decades building relationships with other rural communities in what is currently District 5. We are very dissimilar from the San Fernando Valley. We are on septic. We're in an extremely high fire hazard zone. We are constantly shut off by PSPS. We have no city lights. We're on propane. There's no sewers, no gas service here. So our needs are very, very different from the highly urbanized life in the San Fernando Valley. We're very, very familiar working with the supervisor in District 5. We've done that for decades very successfully. It'll be a huge disservice to our community and our needs if we are cut off and from our fellow rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Co-Chair Maeda, I believe there are no other public comment on this item. Would you like to close public comments for this item?
Yes, public comment for 4A is closed. Let's move to 4B. If I could see the slide for 4B. So here we're going to be discussing one of the possible criteria for evaluating the maps. You've seen already through Preeti's presentation many different ways to carve up or to look at or to analyze the submitted maps. We've only just begun looking at that process. But one other one we've determined or discovered is also very significant, and that is the numbering of the districts, because the districts currently, there's obviously 5 districts, there will still be 5, but they're numbered in a certain way, and district elections are staggered so that 2 of those districts are up for revoting for new supervisors in 2022, and 3 more are up in 2024, I believe, or maybe it's the other way around, but we'll get that clarified shortly. So it's important what the numbering is, and so Holly, our council, is going to go over why this is potentially significant, and how we might want to use those, keep those numberings in mind as we evaluate. In addition, as Gayla mentioned at the outset and showed a slide to that effect, the way in which people submitted maps or drew maps, basically District 1 was the first one they drew, and District 2 was the second one, et cetera. It may have no relation whatsoever to the current districts. Obviously, we're not bound by the current districts, but to the extent possible, we may want to consider numbering or renumbering submitted maps to reflect more or less where those current district numbers are, and Holly will describe that. The other thing I'll mention before Holly gets to her report is that Commissioner Holtzman, who is excused absent today, very early on in the process brought to our attention a concern that had been raised about potential, drawing districts in such a way that voters might not be able to vote for a new supervisor for more years than typical, and how that might cause problems, and wanted us wanted to bring this to our attention. And after evaluating it, and he has also submitted a chart which he would like to show us, that he asked us to show you tonight. And Holly will talk about that as well. But he's the one he was one of the people that brought this issue to our attention. And as we are now faced with evaluating the maps and the numbering system of the maps, we realize it's something we definitely need to put front and center in terms of our consideration. So at this point, I'll just turn it over to Holly.
Thank you. This really is, laid out in the staff report, but I'll just kind of go over it. I'm going to skip this slide and come back to this slide last. But first, to kind of frame the issue of what you may want to consider when as you narrow your choices and you're trying to decide, but which of 1 to 3 maps is better to put through to final consideration. One of the things you may want to consider is the number of voters that get moved in such a way that it lengthens the time between when they get to vote for their supervisor. So this is a result of the county's election system, which is a staggered election system. It's common. Some states don't have staggered elections, but LA County does, and it is in their charter. So per the charter, supervisorial districts 1 and 3 have their last election for that seat, regular election, was 2018, and their next is in 2022, as you can see in this chart. Districts 2, 4, and 5 were last up for election in 2020, and their next election is in 2024. So as a result of needing to equalize total population, there's going to be obviously movement where you are going to be drawing maps that move people from one district to another. And so if you move someone from one district who was set to vote in 2024, if you move someone from District 2 to District 1, for example, they're actually going to be able to vote sooner, 2 years sooner than they would had they not been moved. And that's the term that's often used to describe this is their vote has been accelerated. So they're going to get to vote sooner. But if you flip that around and you say, okay, we're going to move somebody from District 1 to District 2, now they're going to have to wait 2 more years than they would have otherwise to vote. And that is called, commonly referred to as a deferred vote. So this is like when I was mentioning earlier about the cluster or holistic, cluster of issues that the commission is going to have to balance and evaluate. This could be one of them. If there are, you may want to consider in evaluating competing maps, the numbers of people, of voters who are accelerated and or deferred. Just from a voter perspective, people may not at all mind that they get to vote sooner. It's usually the ones that have to, that are moved into a district where they have to, they didn't have a chance to vote for the person that's sitting there, and they have 2 years added on to the time they get to vote. So it's really a policy consideration and a policy discussion you have about what weight you want to put on that. If you want to come up with any sort of strict guidelines, or if you want to just simply have it as one of the many factors in evaluating a map. So I wanted to kind of flag that for you. And Commissioner Holtzman on the next slide put together kind of a matrix that one could use, that commissioner could use to sort of evaluate when it gets down to brass tacks about you're comparing, your last, as you winnow your cluster of maps, in evaluating the effect on folks. And this matrix he put together for any given group that is shifted or geographic area that's shifted, you can look at this and see what their last election year was, compare it to what their next election year would be in the new district, and this will lay out for you the effect on it. It's kind of a great little shorthand chart that he put together that I don't think we're quite prepared to whip this out and use it tonight, because we're just introducing the concepts. But it's a good reference to have when you get down to the brass tacks later in the week. The other issue is related, but perhaps a bit broader, and was kind of highlighted by the fact of the varying district numbers that were coming in on the maps. So if you could go back to that existing supervisorial map, as has been repeated, and I'll repeat again, that if there was a particular map that was proposed by a commissioner or the public that had the numbering of the districts radically changed simply because of an artifact of the software, nothing prevents the commission from using that map and simply renumbering it in a way that is closer to the existing geographical areas. Now, why would you want to do that? It could be that some people submitted maps with the significant renumbering for policy reasons, and as Co-Chair Maeda mentioned, there is no legal prohibition on you drastically renumbering the districts. But again, focusing on a policy question, if, for example, just using the existing districts to illustrate the point, if we swapped districts 5 and 2, for example, or actually, I think a better example is 5 and 3, you could have, you've now taken the supervisor that's currently, the elected representative that's currently representing the geographic area 5 follows the number, okay? So that they would follow, they would go to then, if we swapped 3 and 5, that representative would now move to what is now 3, and the 1 and 3 would now move into what is 5. And if you combine that with the fact that you are probably accelerating some people's right to vote and deferring others, you could have a group, because of renumbering, who have a supervisor representing them that nobody, not just a small number, but nobody in the district was even able to participate in the election for, much less voted for. And you would be adding 2 years on to the time when they would have a chance to vote. So these are, again, policy considerations where the focus here is on the effect on the voter. As we pointed out in the staff report, you are prohibited from considering the residence address of any incumbent. You're prohibited from drawing a map that favors an incumbent or punishes an incumbent. But here, what I'm trying to focus on is the effect on the voters and the electorate that may, for many people who submitted maps, may have been completely unintentional. But you as commission can put some thought into the numbering, and these are really kind of issues we wanted to flag for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the topic.
And before we get to commissioner questions, I just want to mention that I know that we've received some commissioner drawn maps. I don't know how many of you have actually gone on the software to try to draw maps yourself. I've done that. And what happens is I started out kind of thinking it would be kind of natural to start at the top. So my first map was the North County area, and that was by default map number or district number 1. Which is obviously very different than the current the map. So I think it's quite possible that some folks, perhaps most folks, I don't know, may have drawn districts with just piecing together the districts without concern about the numbering scheme. And so one of the things Holly raises is the possibility that we may say, well, we kind of like the areas, but we want to renumber them so that we can try to minimize to some extent this voter delay issue where voters we put in a different district, numbered district, that would really cause them to not have a chance to vote for the new supervisor for extra years, basically. So anyways, that's the that's the issue that we've now put before you, which I think is an important one for you to consider. And let's take some clarifying questions before we go to public comment, if any, on this. Ty?
So we have Commissioner Morales, then Commissioner Wong.
Yeah, just in terms of historical perspective, would love to see what happened back 10 years ago and maybe even 10 years before that, and how that was handled in terms of the redistricting. How many folks were having to wait? Was it a big deal? I would love to kind of get that perspective as well. We don't want to disenfranchise voters, obviously, but having some historical perspective, there are going to be folks that are just going to fall into that, and I think we just have to be clear in terms of, how folks approached it in the past.
You're absolutely right, Commissioner Morales, that there is no way to accomplish redistricting without having some people having moved into a deferred vote status. There's no way. And so we have to accept it. And also the commission absolutely, in evaluating the many other factors, may need to or choose to place a higher priority on other issues and just need to accept it.
Commissioner Wong?
Yes, thank you. So I have to say that the Commissioner Holtzman's chart I was kind of confused about. So I'm not going to, I guess I'm trying to understand both of these issues, and they're related, the numbering of the districts and the fact that the numbering may impact some voters who will be deferred or accelerated. It seems pretty logical to me that we should not disenfranchise the fewest number of people as we can, whether that means using the similar district numbers, because I don't really think people probably really considered the numbering of the districts. But it seems to make sense that we should affect as few voters as possible and not, make as few people as possible wait 6 years to vote. So if that means Priti has to take that into account or calculate that as one of the factors in the maps, then I would kind of encourage her to do that, because that would be helpful for us to know. And as far as, I guess we can get into the Commissioner Holtzman's chart a little later. I don't know if it's later in this meeting or at another time, but it seemed to be kind of backwards as to minimizing the number of voters impacted. But, so I guess I would have to go through that chart if somebody could explain it a little better at some point.
So I believe the chart is posted. Is it not, Gayla, or it will be?
It was posted earlier. I did look at it, and
Okay,
I have
so
to admit that it was confusing.
Okay, well, we can if you have questions of clarification, we can try that now, or we can, put it on the list of things that we still want to talk about. Obviously, Commissioner Holtzman's not here. I'm sure he'd love to explain it to us. At this point, we are seeking clarification questions of staff.
I would just comment that I don't believe in, with the caveat that Commissioner Holtzman is not here, I don't believe he intended this chart to somehow minimize the disruption. It was just an evaluative tool to aid when you're looking at two maps or populations to determine how are these folks affected. Are they in the accelerated group? Are they in the deferred group? I don't believe there's any part of this was intended to minimize it. It's an evaluative tool.
Commissioner Kenny, then Commissioner Stetcher.
I have to confess that I don't completely understand Commissioner Holtzman's chart either, but it separately, I did submit a map, and I think there's two questions. One is the numbering of the districts, which I would suggest be numbered as close as possible to existing districts to minimize the voters that are either accelerated or delayed. And then secondly, there's a second question. Let's say you number them as closely as possible to the existing districts. You still have voters that are going to be disrupted. So if you're comparing two maps, you would want to know which one of the data points that you would want to know is the number of voters that are either going to be accelerated or rated or delayed in the two districts that are both numbered as closely as possible to the existing districts.
Yeah, I believe, and we can ask Priti, it may be possible as you narrow your choices that we can ask whether Priti can include that in. I don't know whether you want to include that at this early stage or how time consuming it is. I'm not sure, but that could be a question for Priti.
If I may, just as a caveat, I mean, all of these may be things as you begin to narrow down your options, that you'd want to look at those kinds of analytics more closely at that stage. Because you do have 22 maps, and as you go through them, there will be some that may appear more appealing for you to delve more deeply into. Just a consideration. I think Commissioner Stetcher's next.
I'm right that we're not arguing either of these 2 points now. You just are asking for clarification. I want to clarify that the two issues are completely separable. We can deal with numbering distinct from dealing with people whose status might be accelerated or deferred. And I think the strongest argument for dealing with numbering is that all of the people we want the largest number of people who voted for a commissioner to still be represented by the commissioner they voted for. That's more salient than whether they vote again in 2 years or whether they vote again in 6 years. So could we somehow figure out how to split these? And do you want to take them up this evening? Or is this merely an introduction for dealing with them at a later time?
We set this up so that you could do either. And we give you the maximum flexibility, and you don't have to decide both. We set up the staff report or the description so you could, take a firm position on one and then just decide to hold the other for later use. So you can do that.
Commissioner Morales and Commissioner Stetcher.
At just point of clarification, we're in a special meeting. Is that possible?
Yes, if it's on the agenda, and this was on the agenda, yes.
Commissioner Stetcher.
Yes, I would like to move that we adopt the policy of renumbering the maps. Co-Chair Maeda does not want me to do that. So
we should not do action until we have public comment, where it's just seeking clarification. Any other commissioners want clarification from Holly before we take public comment, if any? Ty, is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, we do have one public comment on this item. Okay. So for this agenda item, we have a comment from Chris Rowe. Chris, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you're comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Thank you. Yes, Chris Rowe. I would like to say, first of all, I put in the chat that I think it's important to keep in mind the jingles test that was discussed with you last time that I attended. Compactness is really important. And if you put the San Fernando Valley in one district, add the unincorporated areas of the San Fernando Valley, which is mostly District 3, according to your existing map that was shown earlier, then you would not have that many people that would lose their opportunity. So I support, based on compactness and the previous, that you keep the numbers similar to what was in the past, like the San Fernando Valley become the new District 3, 5 in the north as it is, and keep the numbers similar down below. And again, look at compactness. That I see gerrymandered in some of those maps that I saw splitting the San Fernando Valley.
Thank you, Chris Rowe. Ty, any other comments on this one?
We have no other comments for this agenda item. Would you like to close public?
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry. We just got one in right now. So we have Jessica Gonzalez. So Jessica, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you're comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment. Okay, Jessica, whenever you are ready. Jessica, can you hear us? Great. So it seems like we're unable to hear Jessica. Coach Mayer, how would you like to proceed?
I think we need to close public comment so that we can move on to consideration of possible policy options.
Okay. So public comment is closed on this agenda item.
Let's guess why don't we go round robin to see if there's comment on this matter.
Okay. So round robin, rotating alphabetical order, we have Commissioner Kenny.
No comment.
Co-chair Maeda.
This is an important issue. My own view is that it should not, it should be a factor. Well, first of all, that I think it's useful for us to go ahead and renumber any maps that we're contemplating pushing forward, renumber them to more or less approximate where the existing districts are, as Commissioner Kenny suggested. I think that only makes sense. And if we're getting down to the final decisions, I think it probably makes sense to have an analysis done of how many voters would be having their vote delayed versus accelerated, et cetera. But not as a first cut type of thing. I mean, I think there's so many other important considerations for us that I would not want us to get lost with this consideration over others. That's my view.
Commissioner Mark Mendoza.
Thank you. I've been listening very intently, and to both Commissioner Kenny and Commissioner Maeda, I tend to agree with pretty much everything that was stated, and I want to make sure I understand. I too agree that changing the district numbering may not be ideal, and I want to make sure that this, what's being contemplated, I understand, because if we move boundary lines, we're also going to be having people represented by supervisors that they did not vote for, presumably. So are we also going to take that into consideration as one of the other evaluators? As opposed to simply, not simply, but as opposed to somebody getting to vote more frequent or less frequent, accelerated, delayed. I don't think that's that significant myself, as opposed to having somebody representing me that I didn't vote for. So that's my comment.
Holly, do you want to respond to that?
That's really kind of embedded in the acceleration and deferred part is someone that is maybe moved into a district, or there undoubtedly will be people moved into districts to be represented by someone who they didn't vote for. But if they otherwise only have to, for lack of a better term, endure that for 2 years, they're better off than the folks that have to endure it for potentially 4 years, an extra 4 years, or a total of 6 in between when they get to vote. So it's a bit embedded in there. It's part of the acceleration and deferred consideration.
Right. So in some cases, maybe somebody would prefer being in a different district than they are now. So we don't know that. So no. I guess. Yeah, right. So question. So what are we going to be taking a vote on this item or adopting? What exactly I'm still confused about
sure.
What we're going to be doing here.
No one has yet made a motion, but of the options are there could be a motion to give direction to staff on how to deal with numbers on maps as they come in. To maybe make the numbering as close as possible to the current geographical layout. There could be a motion that addresses any sort of policy on future considerations regarding the acceleration or deferred issue. Or as Commissioner Co-Chair Maeda mentioned, you could simply decide to take action on the numbering, but defer any consideration of the deferral or acceleration component until you get farther down the line. You may not even consider that if you decide other policy considerations are better. So this really is a policy decision on those two issues for the commission to decide. It need not decide either policy tonight. It can decide one and not the other. But that's what's before you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morales?
Yeah, so I'm in agreement in terms of the numbering. I just wonder if there was anybody out there that just wanted to renumber them a specific way, and how would we be able to tell? Yeah, so I think this is just the way that the system was set up, and I think folks dealt with it with the way the system was set up. So yeah, but I do agree if we can figure out, it would be easier to figure out who would be accelerated or deferred if the numbers were a little more consistent in terms of region. The maps are not wildly like out of, maybe for a handful, but like wildly out there in terms of doing that. And I do believe it's, it's just a natural consequence of redistricting that some folks are going to be deferred and accelerate. So I think we just have to live with that. And then I think in terms of when we would look into this, I do believe we have to kind of use that as we start narrowing down the final maps, as opposed to start looking at this right now. Because it's just, yeah, it's too many well, not too many considerations, but it is a factor among many factors to be considered. And so that's where I'm at right now.
Commissioner Obregon?
Yeah, hi. It's a point of clarification, I think, for Ms. Holly. In the numbering scheme, right now, District 5 is Antelope Valley. And if we all of a sudden put District 5 as the Long Beach area, the incumbent in her next election is going to be, let's say, separated and probably have to run for District 1 maybe. If I'm trying to understand how the numbering scheme plays on the incumbents. Am I right in thinking that if we assign District 5 to the greater Long Beach, that's her district for the next election?
Yes, as I mentioned, that the elected official follows the number.
The number, okay.
Follows the number, but I will also say that the statute expressly provides that you're not to redistrict in a way that favors or disfavors an incumbent, and that we're not to consider the residence address of an incumbent when drawing the lines. So that's why here on that particular issue, I'm focusing on the effect on the voters. But you are right that the incumbent follows the number.
But Holly, would you go further? In a subsequent election, the incumbent runs in wherever they live. Is that right?
Yeah, the law requires anyone, incumbent or otherwise, any candidate must live in the district that they are running for office.
Yeah, no, that's what I understood. They're following the number, and whatever the number happens to be, they were elected for District 5 until the end of that election.
That's right.
And then wherever they're at, they will then pick it up from there.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Orpinala Segura?
Yes, I'm in agreement with making a decision in terms of the numbering, but because of all the factors, I'm not too comfortable making any decision on the acceleration and deferment. I think I still need to process a lot of the information, and it just seems a little accelerated to make a decision tonight. So I know we have meetings, 2 other meetings this week, so maybe we can revisit that, or I'm not sure if it'll make the agenda, but perhaps we can bring it back. I'm just not comfortable making a decision on that aspect.
Commissioner Haile Soto?
Yes, thank you. I like Commissioner Kenny and Co-Chair Maeda's suggestion, and piggybacking off of Commissioner Morales's suggestion or questioning about the map drawers and then their intent of what the numbering should be. Maybe since we don't have too many maps, maybe staff could reach out to the map drawers themselves and just do a quick poll if they wouldn't mind renumbering the maps to match as closely as possible to the existing supervisor district numbers. Maybe that might be a simple solution, but I'm also in favor of maybe what Commissioner Openrasa would have mentioned, just maybe moving forward and tackling the numbering issue first, and not necessarily the accelerated or delayed voting, just because it's one of a laundry list of factors we have to take into consideration. So that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Saida Soto.
I agree with those of you who are aligned with renumbering to be, I think, closer to where what the current district numbers are, and also feel strongly that we should tackle the question of delayed or deferred or accelerated voting separate. I'd like to just have a better understanding as to how that was handled in the past. I know it's an important issue, but I hope that we can maybe in the coming meetings have a little bit more information to make some decisions around how we handle and address that. Thank you.
Commissioner Stecker.
I'm in agreement with what's been said by the last three commissioners. And I have a lengthy, well, not too lengthy, an argument I will not make tonight about why we should not focus on accelerated versus deferred voting. I think it takes us down a false path. But for tonight, I hope we can agree to renumber districts to correspond with where the largest number of voters are currently residing.
Commissioner Vento.
No comment.
Commissioner Wong.
Yes, I agree with the decision to, change the numbering to correlate with the current districts. I think that makes sense, and I think we could probably make that decision tonight. As for the accelerated and deferred voting, I do think we should make that decision relatively soon, but I think having more information will help. Getting, the survey that Commissioner Soto suggested to see what current map drawers might think, or seeing how it has been handled in the past, that will just give us more information. I'm not sure how quickly that we can get that information, but if we could make that decision within the next couple of meetings, I think that would be useful. I do think it should be a consideration. And so I am curious about Commissioner Stetcher's reasons for why it shouldn't be. So at any rate, I'm interested in that and more discussion about that second issue. But as far as the numbering is concerned, I agree we can make that decision tonight.
Commissioner Franklin.
Yes, I have a question. Gayla, when will we be, the end of accepting maps? We will be accepting maps up until when?
So the advice we've been given is to not set a deadline. When I've had organizations contact me or individuals, I've told them the earlier they get the maps in, for example, if they could get it in time for this week, their maps will have more careful consideration. You're going to be going into public hearings. So hopefully by Thursday, you will pick your top 3 or 4 options, or how many ever you want. When you go into the public hearings, the public's going to start weighing in on those maps, and they're going to be submitting maybe modifications to those maps or other maps that they want you to consider they think are a better take on it. So throughout November, you will continue to receive maps. They may be modifications of your maps. They may be requests you make to ArcBridge to refine your maps further. Let's say you complete your 30 days of public hearings. We're around December 7th. You now are going to be deciding on the final map. Now, someone could submit a map, right? And you as a commission could take the time to look at it, consider it. So really the time that we won't be taking maps is when you make your final selection.
Okay.
But I have been encouraging the public to submit them sooner rather than later so they can have due deliberation.
Great, great. If memory serves me right, I know when we were doing public hearings, there were some out of the box thinking as it relates to redistricting and, you know, how they would like to see their district. And there were maybe a number of public comments wanting one community to be moved or placed into another district. So my question is, if we can have a caveat for maps that will be coming in from this point forward, if the maps are submitted with numbers that do not coincide with the geographical districts as close to as possible, if they can make that stipulation or make that clarity, because some might want to submit a map that they intended to have the district numbered that way. So I would just like to make sure that the public understands that if they do that, then we will take that under consideration, but we will be renumbering those maps that we've received up to date, assuming that they were submitted just by, as Co-Chair Maeda indicated, that was his first map, so that was number one, even though it was up in the northern area. So I would just like to make that clarification, if we can make sure that the public understands that. And doing our public hearing in November, if there were some of the citizens who did submit maps with that intention of numbering it according to the specific districts that they did indicate, then they would have that opportunity to make that clarification. I hope that makes sense, but I just wanted to make sure that we indicate that.
I think the steps would be to just notify the current map makers if they'd want to renumber them to reflect the geography you currently have. I will tell you, if you've looked at the maps, there are going to be some of them that would be very hard to align. So for example, if I may pick on Commissioner Stetcher, he actually drew a map that's sort of like a starfish or pie slices as one of his options. Now, to try to number the pie slices to align with the 5 superstorial districts would be hard. You know, it may not totally align. So that would be an example of a very different type of map, from the current. You also, as a commission, regardless of how the map maker may have numbered them, you as a commission may say, I like this option, but I want it renumbered the following way. Or I like this option, but I want to adjust a couple of these communities based on what I've heard from the COI. These are your maps, okay? The public gives you their best thinking, but you can modify them, to go forward. And those options will be probably like A, B, C, D, and we'll just work our way through.
Well, one thing you could do to sort of narrow the number of maps that you're renumbering is you can make a policy decision tonight that whatever maps you put through for public hearing, you'll direct staff or Priti to renumber, and only do the renumbering of those, and that will save probably a lot of staff time here as we're in the final crunch. So that's an option.
Priti, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that renumbering, let's wait, only renumber those which are finally selected rather than spending the time that we don't have. I mean, we are on crunch time and we don't want to go spin our wheels renaming the plans which don't even stand a chance based on the criteria that we would adopt.
Commissioner Vento, I see your hand is up as well.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I was going to say that that's something that we could deal with when we narrow the maps down. And also the argument about the deferred accelerated thing. Those are things that we can also consider when we narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4 different maps, how this will affect. I really think what we need to be is focusing more on the maps, looking at this. Like the training tonight was really great, pretty. And I appreciate Dan and Brian and Dorina and everybody's questions. That was like really educational for me. So yes, I agree that that's stuff that we should consider towards the end once we narrow the maps down.
Did you have another comment?
All I want to say is that I can't wait to show you the evaluation factors.
Okay, well, let's try to move to that. Just one comment, though, to Commissioner Franklin and to others as well. The fact that someone might have an intention to number map, the districts a certain way, they can tell us that if they have a strong view that they want, for whatever reason, this particular district to be a certain number. That's it's not of no moment to us, but we are free to disregard that if we like. If we like the map otherwise, but we want it numbered differently, we can renumber differently. And presumably we wouldn't do it arbitrarily. We would be doing it on the basis of trying to minimize the number of voters whose vote is going to be delayed. And I think that's very sensible. Is there a motion is there a motion on this item?
Well, and Commissioner Maeda, did you complete the round robin just to make sure everybody heard?
Yes. All commissioners attending have spoken.
Okay, great.
This, if people didn't want to make a motion, this is absolutely something you can provide direction to staff. When you direct which maps to put forward, you can give the numbering direction at that time.
So I don't see any clamoring for a motion right now. So let's defer that. But I'm hopeful that you at least have an understanding now of something that took me a while to figure out, to wrap my head around why the numbers matter. I think it's clear the numbers do matter, at least to some extent. And so we should at least be considering that. But I agree, we don't necessarily have to, make hard and fast rules right now about how we're going to proceed. And it does make sense to avoid messing around with the numbering of maps that, as Pretty says, don't really have a chance of proceeding, and wait to do that when we have a smaller number that we're considering. Somebody was saying something.
Commissioner Maeda,
yes,
if I may, a motion was asked for. I'll make the motion, and as I understand it, this would be for direction to Arc Ridge, and I guess as a policy that we would try to keep the numbering as close to the current supervisorial districts as possible. What would that be? We talked a lot about the numbering, but what? And it sounds like there's some consensus, but I don't think I can articulate exactly what we want here.
Well, you'd have to just look at maps and compare them to the existing and say, this one is more or less North County, so that's going to be 5. Similar for the other areas. And as Gayla mentions, in some cases, it's going to be very difficult, which is why it's another reason why we shouldn't be doing that with every single map. We should only be doing that with those that we get down to the end, where we actually are going to proceed to, publish those as the maps we're going to consider.
Commissioner Mendoza, just to clarify, we can address the numbering on the day, when you choose your final maps. So you need not make a motion this evening unless you want to.
Understood.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner Wong.
I guess, yeah, I guess I had originally considered, trying to make a decision about the maps and the numbering of the maps of the districts tonight. But after Prithi's comments about why it would take a lot of time to do that and why we should not waste our time perhaps doing that. That's what, made me reconsider about not making a motion tonight about that. So, so perhaps soon when we do narrow it down, I do think we can make a motion at that time.
And I think to Commissioner Mendoza's comment, if we do get down to, let's say, 3 maps that we're going to consider, it may well be that we would all reach consensus quickly. This should just be, we like this one, except should be renumbered this way. We'll have to see it. We don't know yet. We'll just have to see. Okay, seeing no motion, let's move on to the next one, 4C. Discussion of other potential criteria for evaluating maps. I guess this is what ArcBridge is eager to get to. So let's have them get to it.
So I'm going to give the screen to Preeti because she has a methodology to go over. This is just to remind the commissioners and the public what are the criteria. A reasonably equal population within a 10% deviation, geographic being contiguous, preserving the geographic integrity of the cities, neighborhoods, and communities of interest, which is why Preeti started collecting the numbers of communities and cities that were split, as well as alignment with your COI models. Don't bypass any populations being compact. Minimum splitting of cities, neighborhood councils, unincorporated areas, and COIs, and a ratio of total population to maybe CVAP. And then compliance with the VRA, which we could do as a pass-fail later on your preferred options to be performed by Jonathan Katz. So those are just some of the criteria for you to keep in mind. I'm going to turn it over to Preeti for her to show her straw model of how to evaluate. And while she's pulling it up, I do notice that someone had written a comment into the QA. I'm going to ask people who want to submit written comments to do it online through our public comment form. But any members of the public who want to look at the maps more closely, they are all posted on our hub, on our website, and you can then open them up and look at greater detail. And take it away, Preeti.
We are looking at some of the evaluation factors. As you can see, we have received 23 plans and we have to figure out a way as to how to narrow them down. So one of the criteria that we are looking at is maximum deviation. And maximum deviation is the difference between the most populated and the least populated district. Ideally, all the districts should be as close to the ideal population as possible. So that is one of the criteria. And in all our public hearings and all the meetings that the commission has had so far, there was the big, strong feeling that was that my community should not be split. So communities of interest is something very important. And we are looking here at 348 cities / CSAs, which is consolidated statistical areas. Then we are looking at 99 Los Angeles City neighborhood council splits. We are also looking at communities of interest models that we created, Model A, Model B, and Model C. So those would be looked into.
If I may, point of clarification, I believe your 348 are the CSAs. That would include the 88 cities, the 100 and some unincorporated areas, and then the smaller community breakdown CSAs within the city of LA. So I just want to make sure people realize it's the CSAs we were discussing earlier.
So the denominator, like you were asking, what's the denominator for CSAs? It's 348. For neighborhood councils, it's 99. And for COI splits, it's 27. So the next thing we would have to look at is compactness, because that is one of the requirements for redistricting, that the district should be as compact as possible. Then another criteria which would come into play is minority districts. So looking at these evaluation factors, we came up with a model. But before that, let me explain some of the things. Compactness. These are the compactness tests that are typically used in redistricting. And there are several of those, but we are planning to use one of them rather than all of them. So we are thinking of using the Polsby-Popper test, which is a test for gerrymandering. And here the numbers are, the closer it is to 1, that means the district is compact. And the same with other tests, reorg tests. So these tests are typically used in redistricting. So we are going to use those, the Polsby-Popper test for compactness. And what is the Polsby-Popper test? This is what it is. It's the ratio of the area of the district to the area of a circle whose circumference is equal to the perimeter of the district. So here, if it's closer to 0, that means it's not compact. But if it's closer to 1, it means it's more compact. So this would be one of the evaluation criteria. And with this now, I present to you the evaluation model. So the first thing that we have is a sort of a classification. And this is something that we could use your input on as well. So one of them could be that, is it like the current as-is supervisorial districts with minor changes? Or is it like the as-is with somewhat major changes? Or is it like a totally new configuration, or it's other? So this is something that we are still thinking about as to how to put the score on it. So far we are in our model that we are planning to use currently, or which we have used, we have not scored this. So the next thing that we have used is maximum deviation. So the scoring system is from 1 to 5 or 0 to 5. If the maximum deviation is less than 2%, then the score would be 5 out of 5. If the maximum deviation is between 2 to 4, then the score would be 4. 4 to 6, the score is going to be 3. And if it's closer to 10, then the score is going to be only 1. So the top score would be 5. So if the deviation was under 2, the plan would receive a score of 5.
Commissioner, or Pretty, if I may, not all of the commissioners are able to see the slides move forward. Is everybody on slide 7? I know one of the commissioners is still on slide 4. Is everybody on slide 7? So Commissioner Saida Soto, I don't know what advice to give you. Which slide are you on? Does it show?
I'm on evaluation factors. There's a slide on my screen.
Not the evaluation model?
No.
If I may interject, if we all turn off our video, she may be able to stream.
Okay, why don't we do that? Let's try that.
Is it better now?
Commissioner Saida Soto?
I'm still on the same slide. Let me
Maybe exiting and entering.
yeah, that may be the best. Okay, thank you.
We'll see you in a bit.
Okay.
Pretty, I think you can continue.
All right. So the next thing is minority districts. So here we are using, if there are 5 minority districts, they'll get only 1. Here it's like a bell curve, because if there are all 5, that's, if there are 3, then the plan is going to receive a 5. If there are 4, it's going to be a 2. 3, it's going to be a 5. If there are 2 minority districts, it's going to be 3. And if it's only 1, it's going to be a 2. And if there are no minority districts, then the plan is going to get a 0. And the reason why we came up with the scoring methodology that there is a large minorities are in majority in Los Angeles County. So if you happen to have a plan with no minority districts, it's not even possible. Then there are 348 cities. So if the number of cities or CSAs which are split is under 10, that means the plan is going to get a 5 score. If it's between 10 to 15, it's going to get a 4. And then 16 to 25, it's going to get a 3. 26 to 35, it'll get a 2. And if it's like 36 to 45, it's going to get a 1. And if the splits are greater than 45, it's going to get a 0 score.
Preeti, we have a few hands from commissioners. We have Commissioner Kenny, then Commissioner Wong, Commissioner Orpanela-Segura, and then Commissioner Stetcher.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is a question that I asked you earlier, Preeti. You are talking about minority districts, but I don't know what you mean by a minority district. How is minority district defined? I actually have 2 questions. That's my first question.
Minority districts are defined where the total population, and we can talk about it, but right now we are looking at total population being over 50%. Okay. My second question is that when you have the 3 classifications, the 348, they're not cities, but I forget what they're called, NDAs or whatever they're called. Yes.
CSAS.
CSAs. Okay, you're double counting because the 99 neighborhood councils are all in the city of Los Angeles. And the last category, which is the maps, the community of interest maps, I don't know where you got the 27 because there are 3 different maps, but those 3 categories are all measuring the same thing. And you're giving each of them 5 points. So you end up emphasizing those 3 categories. And maybe that's intentional, but I don't know, no particularly know why. What happens in the COI splits, we have, we may just group them as one because there are like 27 in one, 28 in one. So the number is just around 27 COI splits in between the 3 models. And okay. This is just a model, and we are looking forward to your feedback on it. I guess my inclination would be, instead of having the top score be 5 on those 3 categories, have the top score be maybe 3. I don't know, because they're double. You end up giving more weight to that than anything else. That's all I have. Let's go to the next people. Okay, that's a good point. Mm-hmm.
May I suggest maybe we can go through a round robin, because I suspect there's probably a number of questions for clarification on this.
Could we let Preeti finish going through all the criteria before we go through the round?
Sure. That's a great idea. Yeah.
That's really good. So this is what we have for the splits, and there is a score of 15 altogether for the COIs, the cities, the neighborhood councils, and the COI models. And then we have the compactness score. And we came up with these classifications based on the data. We analyzed the first 7 submissions. And here the Polsby-Papper compactness score is, we said if there are 5 districts and it gives a score to each district, right? So we said the number of districts which are greater than 0.2. So if there are all 5 which are greater than 0.2, we would give it a 5. If there are only 4 districts, we would give it a 4. If there are 3, then they'll get a 3 score, 2, 1. And if no district is greater than 0.2, then it gets a 0 score. So these are the, this is the model that we came up with. And you can ask questions now, and then I can actually show you some results and how the scoring came out, and then we can also show you the map.
There's one more row, Pretty.
One more.
What's demographers?
That is the demographers. It's something which is a little bit subjective that we haven't scored yet. But, that's just the visual appeal of the plan. If the plan is going all over the place, but without looking at it, the score is coming high, we would like to take a look at it and see, is it visual? Does it have a visual appeal? Does it conform to, does it look good?
Okay, let's go ahead and this is a good time, I think, to go round robin on this.
As a reminder, we're going to be rotating alphabetical order by last name, and we're going to start with co-chair Maeda.
Oh, that's convenient. First, Pretty, I think this is an admirable job to try to create a model that has some quasi-mathematical, appeal. But I have to say I'm troubled, or I'm not troubled. I would say I would only want to consider this at the extremes, or to get some initial sense of a map. But I have problems with a lot of it. So I agree with Commissioner Kennedy that counting CSAS splits, neighborhood council splits, COI splits, that's the ×3 of essentially the same kind of thing. I think this is important enough. Maybe it's ×2, but I wouldn't do all 3. Each of these classifications are given the same weight, a score of 5, including the subjective score. I certainly don't think they each deserve the same weight. Maximum deviation, in my mind, it's if you can make the cut, then you qualify. So I'm not sure I would be so insistent on weighting a map that has a really good maximum deviation if everything else is good. Same, I feel, with compactness. If it's weird looking, which is maybe the demographer subjective test, then yeah, I think that is something to think about. But I'm probably most troubled, or at least questioning, about the not scored classification about as is minor changes. I'm curious, is your thought, Preeti, at this point, that if it's as close to existing as possible, that gets a higher score or a lower score? I'm not sure that, I just don't know what those mean. As is of major changes, of minor changes, is it better to have less change? I can't say that. So in any event, and the minority districts, I'm not sure. Clarification, I guess, when you say minority districts, are you saying total minorities versus the white population, total population, or are you saying a particular minority group, let's say Latinos, is more than 50%? Which one of those qualifies as a minority district?
We are talking about any race or ethnicity which is greater than 50%, and that is mostly it's Latino.
It's going to be the Latino part. So it's not Latinos plus Blacks plus Asians. It's just Latinos. Okay. And I apologize. I now realize what I said was not really clarification. It was my opinion. But given that, feel free to state what your thoughts are on this as well. We will take public comment, but if you have clarification questions, why don't you ask those, and then we'll give you a chance to make broader comments after the public comment as well.
Next, we have Commissioner Mendoza.
Thank you. I took higher math and statistics many years ago as part of a college curriculum. I'm relying on the professionals here that are doing this. I'm troubled when I keep seeing. I know it's been pointed out by Gayla. We have 88 cities in the county of Los Angeles. So I believe Commissioner Kenny, I'm concerned that there's, when you roll that number through, which wasn't 88 cities, it was 300 and some odd cities. I think there's more emphasis or less emphasis placed in different places. But I don't know exactly. So that concerns me. I think that what we have here is a valiant effort and work product and deliverable that is a good working model. I think we're going to be able to use and to good advantage to move things along. I'm not at all concerned about the visual aesthetics, if I understood correctly, how something might look. I almost want to say that's irrelevant, how it might look. What does it do? Does it perform? Does it meet, the different criteria that we're going to, apply in our evaluation? So I don't think that, unless I'm misunderstanding what was stated, I don't think that's something we really need to put too much emphasis on. Thank you.
Commissioner Morales.
Yeah, for me, it's not too dissimilar to what folks have been saying. I think, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to go about this process. Having a framework or an evaluation model is helpful, and the way that it's outlined clearly kind of gives us what we're going to be working with. I really have issue with we need to stop calling the 348 cities, like, moving forward. It's like they're not cities. They're inclusive of cities. They're inclusive of unincorporated areas. They're inclusive of the neighborhood councils. And so we just have to be very clear, because the public is going to be looking at our evaluation model and they're going to be looking for flaws. And so we have to be as clear as possible to be able to make sure that we get that straight. In terms of the way that the scoring is, I'm giving more weight to different categories to make sure we're not double dipping, like those types of things. I think, that's definitely something we need to look into. I'm still a little kind of confused by the Polsby-Popper compactness score, but I'm sure I'll get it in due time. And I too agree the demographers, it's just like you get extra points for making it look pretty. It's not really a solid argument. Although if you have like compactness and then, connected by one little strip, that may be problematic. Maybe that's what we're talking about, is like, it's just not fitting a particular, look in terms of what we're trying to do. So yeah, those are just my thoughts there.
Commissioner Obregon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know the intent was kind of like trying to create some sort of a rubric for evaluation purposes. But I don't think we really need that. I think the idea here is the rubric is all the rules and all the guidelines that we have been adhered to, and we know them. And so we need to just kind of center in on the actual maps instead of trying to grade the maps, So, I don't think we need this. I think we can proceed without it. Thank you.
Commissioner Orpinella Segura.
Yes, thank you, Pretty, for creating this. I'm frankly confused about the minority districts, and I'm trying to make sense of my notes. So I'm not sure why. I guess I want to understand the scoring behind it and the reason, I guess the reason for the scoring, because I don't fully grasp that concept. And let me look at my notes. The demographer scoring, I'm a little concerned with the term that was used, subjective, because all the other criteria are not necessarily reliant on evaluators' subjectivity. So if a map, let's say, doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, but it meets all the other criteria, why would we score it less? So I'm not sure that we actually need that criteria, or maybe it should be defined differently. Yes, sorry, let me relook at my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything. So I guess at the end of the round robin, if you can explain again, please, the minority districts and how the scoring corresponds to each. Thank you.
Commissioner Haile Soto.
Yes, thank you. I thank you for at least bringing in this table. I think might be helpful. I definitely want to see some of these scores as I'm processing the maps, as I was evaluating all the submitted maps. I kind of was doing it informally. I just kind of looking at whether or not they were compact or if they were splitting some COIs. So to me, at least it would be beneficial to know how many like COIs were being split. But definitely maybe from here on out, it seems like it's a common theme is the 348 cities. I think maybe we should just limit it to the 88 incorporated cities in LA County. Obviously, one city is going to have to be split, which is the city of Los Angeles, due to its large population. But I think that covers my comments for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Saida Soto.
Thank you. I also would appreciate additional explanation on minority districts. And then I think in terms of the demographers category or classification, I guess what I was thinking was that that may be important for the purpose of ensuring that a map, that we're looking at maps that may have, again, like these tiny slivers cut out or included, which may meet compactness, but may have other implications for communities being split. So I'd like more information on that as well, and if there is a way to have that kind of classification and not have it be subjective. Thanks.
Commissioner Stetcher.
Thank you. I think this is going to be very helpful for us, even if it just produces a ranking so that we can begin at the top and start to look at maps. Because our other choice is for all of us to look at all 20 maps and come to the meeting with our preferred candidates based on our subjective judgment. And this at least starts to tie it down to a criteria that we know are important. So I would agree with Co-Chair Maeda that maximum deviation it's a criterion, a threshold, you either meet it or you don't. But these gradations are really not important. If you want to give one bonus point for a map that's below 4% or below 5%, perhaps that's a little better. But I don't think a map with only 2% deviation is significantly more attractive to us than one with 8% deviation. I agree with Commissioner Kenny and the others who have said you should take the city of LA CSAs out of that category. So it consists of the 88 actual cities plus the unincorporated area as classified by the county into
authoritative jurisdictions. And it is true that most of the weight in this model goes to COI, goes to the third of our 5 explicit criteria, not separating cities and jurisdictions and communities of interest. But I don't think that's so bad. I think that's really where we want to try to put our emphasis, along with creating an appropriate number of minority districts. And finally, on the Polsby-Popper compactness score, consider this. I think it might work better if you summed them and then set a threshold for the sum. I'm thinking about a map that has 1 long snake and 4 coins. That would only have 1 district that violated the threshold, but it would be a horrible map with that snaky district. And maybe what we want is some sense of how snaky all of the districts are, and adding them up might be more sensitive to that. Thank you.
Commissioner Vento?
No comment. Many good things have been said, so thank you.
Commissioner Wong?
Sorry, thanks. Sorry, it just takes me a little while to get to my unmute button. Yes, I do think I agree that this is a valiant effort by Priti to try to put some semblance of a objective criteria, so we have a starting point. I am, like others, concerned with some of the scoring for these factors, and I'm glad that Priti, you shared this, and much of my comments probably correspond to some of the other comments about the maximum deviation. I don't think is as important. I like the scoring for what I believe are the majority minority districts, and that the maximum scoring would be for 3. If there were 3 majority minority districts, then it would get the top scoring. And given the population of LA County, I think that that's appropriate. And then I also agree that perhaps we should just, in terms of the cities and the CSASs, we should just probably look at the 88 cities and the 27 or 28 communities of interest. I do have questions about the compactness factor, because you said that there were several different ways to measure compactness, and I'm not sure exactly why you chose this Polsby-Popper test, but if it is possible to kind of let us know why you think that is the most appropriate, that would help me feel more comfortable about assigning a score to that, because I don't quite understand that. And as far as that demographers factor, which, it does seem pretty subjective. I guess maybe what Commissioner Stetcher was saying in terms of the snakiness of something, I suppose then that might be what you're trying to get at in the demographers score, but I don't think maybe we might need to get to that as a objective number. But when we're talking about the maps, I think that will weigh in favor or not of a map if it looks kind of contorted and just connected by small areas. At any rate, that's kind of my feedback on these different factors, and I thank you for doing it. I know this takes time. What I'm worried about is some of the commissioners don't find it useful, so I guess we should decide if you should take the time to analyze all the maps using this model.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes, thank you. I find this evaluation model extremely useful. The thing that kept coming to my mind is proving. When we bring forth our maps in any lawsuits, I hope none. I hope we don't get any. But just in case, having this model to prove or to explain how we came up with our maps and what it means. Data is essential. So this is an evaluation tool that Priti has come up with, our demographer. So thank you for it, and I find it extremely useful.
And Commissioner Kenny.
Again, looking at this as a matter of our record, I think the headings where it says as is minor, as is major, totally new and other can probably be deleted because I don't think they necessarily relate to what's being evaluated. And then going down the vertical classification, the maximum deviation, we may want to have it closer to 10 than not if we're trying to, for example, keep the San Fernando Valley whole. I don't think you can keep the San Fernando Valley whole and have equal districts. So I'm not sure that having a low maximum deviation is going to be a good thing in the end. But I do think that scoring it might be helpful. And then the number of minority districts, again, I looked at some of the numbers in some of the maps that were submitted. If you have a district that is close to majority minority, it might be almost as good as one that's true, 49% versus 51%. I think that, we need to look at that. I don't mind scoring it that way, but again, I don't think that I don't think we can look at this as black and white. And then the compactness score, I think, again, that's evaluating individual districts within a map, and probably they should be added together and you get a composite score for the whole map. And then finally, the demographers, I don't see the utility of that personally. Those are my comments.
So I think we've gone through one round. Gayla, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, there are a couple points of clarification I'd like to make. One is when people were talking about the 348 cities, it should be CSA. And I know we're very aware of the 87 cities, and we're very much aware of the need to look at LA City in a different way. But keep in mind that 10%, 1 million people live in unincorporated areas. And the county has defined what these unincorporated areas are. And the public works and a lot of the other services are delivered around fire, sheriff, library services. They're delivered around those unincorporated communities. So those are important to keep in mind. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is when LA City designed the neighborhood councils, they did not necessarily align them with the existing CSA communities. So it really is a different configuration. And I might suggest that you may not want to reject a map simply because it's split a lot of these communities. You might like the map conceptually, but you might give direction to Arcbridge to unsplit communities that inadvertently might have been split. So you can make some fine tuning and adjustments if you like conceptually where the map is going, if that makes sense. So I think the numerical compilation of splits may be useful, but I'm not sure you need to score it per se. It may be just something you need to clean up. So I just want to make people aware of those differences.
Thank you. If there's no objection, I'd like to go ahead and go to public comment, and then we can go back to the commissioners for a final round. Ty, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, we have one currently in queue. So Chris Chris. Chris Rowe, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you are comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 3 minutes, or I'm sorry, 1 minute to make your public comment.
Hello again. Yes, I'm a former member of the West Hills Neighborhood Council. I think that you should take the Neighborhood Council criteria out. Work on LA City redistricting. So for example, the San Fernando Valley, we have the community of Northridge. I believe there's 3 neighborhood councils in Northridge, 2 in Granada Hills. So that is redundant. You should focus more. So for example, when you're talking about an unincorporated population versus, say, for example, the community of Woodland Hills in the San Fernando Valley has about 80,000 people. It's important to weight the communities within the city of LA versus a neighborhood council. So look at the communities. Then you won't be up to the 300 plus areas, but there are communities, and those communities of Woodland Hills, West Hills, and whatever all have large populations, just almost equal to or greater than some of your smaller individual cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And we have a...
Look at map 3, please. Map 3, pretty should have been able to give map 3 to you. It shows.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
And so we have a few more hands from the public. Next is Barbara Brody. Barbara, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you are comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment. Barbara, if you can hear me, you should be prompted by Zoom to be promoted to a panelist. You will just need to confirm that.
Hello, Barbara Brady from Westwood South of Santa Monica Boulevard Homeowners Association. A couple of observations. One, because these variables are not all equal in weight, perhaps it would make more sense to use something like a consumer reports rating system, which has a color coding from red to green, red, orange, yellow, light green, dark green, so that visually you can look at different plans and be able to get a feeling for which ones were meeting certain criteria better than others. I find it helpful when I do ranking on different things. I also think it's important to look at these maps with the potential of horse trading and using different pieces of different maps over time. Let's see. I do think neighborhood council integrity is important. Perhaps there are places in the valley where it's not so important, but many of us in our communities do relate and work together on a neighborhood council basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Joseph Roth. Joseph, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you are comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Joseph Roth. I'm actually on the board of the West Side Neighborhood Council. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to chime in with what the previous speaker said. I'm not as familiar with the valley as I am with this side of the hill, but definitely on the west side, neighborhood council boundaries do matter. And particularly because frequently they don't necessarily sync up perfectly with main arteries or freeways or some physical barriers. So it's best to pay attention to them. We do work very, very closely with each other as we do have similar issues, both at the county level as well as the state level, where we frequently have so much in common. Additionally, I think particularly for our West Side Neighborhood Council, we have filed a letter saying that we would like to be grouped with the neighbors to the north in UCLA because we have such historical ties to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we have Josh Wheeler. Josh, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself, and if you are comfortable, you can share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Josh Wheeler, calling again. I just wanted to say to uplift some of the comments of the commissioners. I think the mapping criteria, there's super problematic components to it, but appreciate Chair Maeda's comments. I also would urge you guys to follow MALDEF and Asian Americans Advancing Justice letter that they sent in, urging you to use CVAP for those minority criteria. I think it's in Los Angeles, it's so tantamount with the immigrant population, especially with the undercount. I think we have to think about deviations in a different way. I also think with regard to these neighborhood components, the LA Times did a mapping project a couple years ago that did LA Times neighborhoods for the entire county. I would urge you to think about using those because those sometimes can work better than neighborhood councils. But thank you all for all the good work you've all been doing.
Thank you, Josh. Next, we have Valerie M. Valerie, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself. And if you are comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment.
Hello, thank you so much for taking this comment. I just wanted to say that this rubric is a great starting point, but I also echo what folks are saying about possibly using a total score just to help rank them, and then maybe having a visual like red, green, and yellow so that you can quickly look over the criteria and to see where a certain map does better in certain places as compared to others. And also please add CVAP to this list of what you'll be scoring on. But otherwise, I think this is great. And I think it makes it very transparent on how you're evaluating these maps by using this rubric. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Next, we have John Mendoza. John, momentarily you'll be able to unmute yourself. And if you are comfortable, you may share your video. Once you begin speaking, you will have 1 minute to make your public comment. Hey, John, whenever you are ready, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I support the scoring and ranking method. I think is very beneficial rather than just using colors where you could actually, give each commissioner can give points, and then add them up at the end of the discussion. The Safe Clean Water has the same kind of method they use on the board when they evaluate water projects, and they do it according to scoring. And this is that's how I kind of reflected on that when I seen this presentation tonight. So if there's no neighborhood scoring, maybe that could be included also. Thank you. Neighborhood council scoring, I mean.
Thank you, John. Okay. Co-Chair Maeda, I see no other hands or folks in queue. Would you like to close public comment?
Yes, let's close public comment on this and quickly go around round robin again for other comments, evaluations by the commissioners.
Okay. And before we do that, I do see.
We may also ask people to turn on their cameras now so the public can see.
Let's do that. And I think Preeti has her hand raised. Maybe she'd like to respond to some things.
I wanted to thank you all for the comment. This is like the first step that we were taking towards this. And we also ran the model for the first 7 and also some other plans that I wanted to show you that how the scoring worked out. And the plan that got the highest score, then we went and I would like to show that to you and see what the model did. But also I'm looking for, the way we thought was a starting point. But whatever you all think, we are looking for your feedback. And this is something which I don't think has been done before. And we wanted to take a stab at.
Why don't we go ahead and have Preeti show us the model as currently configured as applied to the first 7 then.
All right, so what we did here, we looked at the first. So here, these are our first 7 maps that we looked at. And you can see that we have not applied the other one, that we talked about. That is more like a grouping that we were thinking of, but we do not have, that is something still that we are thinking about. But anyway, the scoring was for maximum deviation, minority, majority, neighborhood council splits, city/CSA splits. So the criteria I talked about. So based on that, we have a map that scores 25, which is the highest score. And we have another map which scores like 24. So those were the scores based on the current model. And I'm going to take you and show you what these maps actually look like. And I wanted to show some more that we did some analysis on the commissioner submissions. So here, so these were the ones that were, these are the ones that were submitted by the community, and they are the first 7. And these are the ones that were submitted by the commissioners. So now that we know which ones are, so let's take a look at number 4, which scored pretty high. So I'm going to actually take you to the website where we are going to show you what the shape looks like, because this is all numeric so far. So let me do that.
Pretty. The 004, is that the San Fernando Valley?
I'll tell you what number 4 is here. So this is number 4, and it scored number 25 based on our scoring model. And if I were to go back, you can see that this one, number 1, if you look at number 1, and then you can look at number 2, 3, and in the first 7, this one got the highest score. And then if you look at this, number 5, number 6, so 4 was the highest. And then we also had number 7, which was not too far behind. And then if you remember, let's go back to my slide. We looked at 17 through 20. So these were the ones, and I have to go back and see what the score was. And if you look at 20, look at the ones, and I'll go back and show you the score one more time. So looking at these, you can look at the shapes and you can look how the system, without looking at them, was able to score the plans. And here, if you look at 17, got the highest score in these. And then I'll go back and show you 17 and 18. And then we have 19. And then we have 20. So just look at these scores and I'll take you back to the maps. So look at 17, got a real good score, 18, 19, and look at 20, did not get a good score because of compactness, because of whatever other factors where it got a lower score. But looking at the shape, you can see that how the algorithm is, how the evaluation model is working.
Christy, can I just ask you a question about Commissioner Holtzman's map number 20? It was one of the maps that did not use the mapping software. Did that make a difference at all to how it scored?
That does not make a difference, the shape of the districts, you know, because see, we look at compactness, right? And I can go back again to the rubric that I have and how many splits it has and what is the shape of the district space, see how the district goes. So obviously it probably got a low compact score, but we can go back and look at the rubric there. So let's stop this share. And so basically what we did was we tried the model out. And some of the plans you're going to see, despite the fact that there may be redundancy in the neighborhood council splits, in the city CSA split, the COI splits, but some of them have very low splits. And what we gathered from the meetings that you had, the public hearings that you had, the COI models that we created, it seemed like those were the important things for the community. And if yeah, go ahead.
Just have to make a clarification. Can you show that map again? I mean, that chart again? The numerical score reflects individual, scores, if you will. The overall numerical score reflects the sum of these individual scores. And you've got 5, is it correct that you have 5 points possible on NC split, cities, CSA split, COI A split, COI B split, COI C split?
Oh, let me go back and show that to you. Here, if you look at if it's under 5, then it would get and we do have some. We do have some where, the splits are very low. And they do have a 5.
But can you go back then to what we just looked at, the other chart? So you get a specific score for, if you have very low COI splits, that's counted 3 different times up to a maximum of 5. Is that right? So the problem is even.
Yeah, there are 40 possible points.
Yeah, the problem is even worse than I had pointed out, which is to say that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 5 maximum points. 25 possible points is based on splits, right? Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is an awful lot of the weighting of this chart.
And once again,
Especially when the
It's-
koi splits are going to be so similar. That's really triple counting the same thing, almost essentially the same thing.
Yeah, and here we are thinking, that maybe we have the COI models A, B, and C. We could somehow combine them. That's because, those are variations, as you all may know, that COI B came out of COI A, where we wanted to elaborate more on certain areas, and COI C was, so yeah, we because the scores are pretty much quite similar in those COI A, B, and C.
Okay. I'm just pointing out that there's so much redundancy in that. That's the splits area. And we may decide that that's okay because that's the most important thing. But I just wanted us to be very clear if that's what we're going to be doing. Okay. I think we've seen that. And given that it's 9:17, if we can just quickly move through for what any additional commissioner comments on the any guidance on the model for Priti. Let's go round robin quickly.
Okay, so we're going to start off with Commissioner Mendoza.
The dialogue and information dissemination has been invaluable. No further comment.
Commissioner Morales.
Yeah, just have the same questions as before. No further comment.
Commissioner Obregon.
No further comment. I think everything's been reviewed.
Commissioner Orpanela Segura.
Yes, I still have the question regarding the minority district, or I may be getting the name wrong. I'm still not clear on how the points were assigned. So at the end of the round robin, if you can please provide a response. Thank you.
Commissioner Haile Soto.
Yes, thank you. I kind of like some of the public input about the color coding system. I think that might be a different way to kind of assess these maps based on these objective criteria. Well, some of them that are objective. I think that might help us quickly assess some of these maps. Thank you. No further comments.
Commissioner Saida Soto.
I'm with Commissioner Pineda Segura, needing additional information on minority districts. And in addition, thank you, Gayla, for clarifying about the 300 plus CSAs and just kind of reminding us that there are my goodness, the word escaped my mind. Unincorporated communities that that have been defined and have names within that, within those numbers.
Commissioner Stetcher.
Thank you. I'm concerned about time, so I don't have any more suggestions. I hope maybe Priti can take what we've said, make some adjustments, and get us scores really soon, because we have to publish maps in 4 or 5 days, or please correct me if I'm misunderstanding. And we haven't yet really started talking about what we like about the maps. So I think we have to get this insight as a way to get started and then begin to talk about maps.
Commissioner Bento.
No further comments.
Commissioner Wong.
Yes, my only comment is that I did not realize that you were using the 3 different COI models and giving a score for each one. So I agree with Commissioner Maeda that those splits, I'm not sure are really overweighted, and so I'm a little concerned about that. But I think as a starting point, we could use this tool with the kind of adjustments that we've kind of recommended. I would think you should consolidate the COI model into 1 score rather than 3. At any rate, and I am also concerned with the time, as Commissioner Stetcher was saying, that I don't know how long it takes you to do the scoring. I mean, and to do all of the evaluation of all the maps. We have 24 maps or whatever. So if you think you can do that, then I'm fine with doing that. I think we would have to defer to you to tell us, you know, how much time that would take and how quickly you can do it. And then we should just make a decision based on that.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes, I agree with Pretty with weighing the core models A, B, and C because there was one public comment that had made a recommendation that we utilize model B. So weighting A, B, and C model is useful for me. The commissioner's model, very good work on Commissioner Stetcher and Commissioner Kenny. But I have no further questions.
Commissioner Kenny?
I have no comments.
Co-Chair Maeda?
So it clearly appears that I'm outnumbered, that the majority of the commissioners and the public seem to think that this is a useful exercise. I think it might be useful, at least as a rough cut, but I'm definitely concerned about a lot of things about it. The weighting, 3 different COI models, each of them get 5 points, plus neighborhood council, plus CSAs. I don't think that makes any sense. I would prefer maybe just the CSAs and one COI score. I'm glad to hear that the as is thing is just a grouping rather than a score, but I don't think that that's particularly useful. I think Commissioner Stetcher's suggestion that he made in an email that I saw about grouping with regards to the maps that keep the valley, San Fernando Valley together, maps that keep San Gabriel Valley together, the maps that do certain other things. I think that might be a more useful grouping exercise. I agree with Commissioner Stetcher and Commissioner Kenny's suggestion that the compactness score be added up to an overall score, and then that overall score be ranked in some way. Minority districts, I think I now understand it, although you've been asked Pretty to explain it again. I agree that it's useful in the way that it's set up now, but for a finer cut, we're really going to have to go to CVAP. CVAP is more important in terms of the differentiating between the districts that we need to be at the level of. And finally, a warning that this chart or this model ranks compactness equally with a lot of other criteria. It's not actually equal with every other criteria. We have statutory obligation that ranks the criteria, number 1 being population, and standard deviation is part of that, I suppose. But compactness is only important to the extent it doesn't conflict with others. So that's definitely not as important as every other criteria. So with all that in mind, if Pretty can revise the model and crank out these scores for the other maps, I'm fine with it. So that's my comment. Can we, Pretty, do you have, you were asked to opine on or to explain further on the minority districts. Maybe you could do that.
The way minority districts be scored, and once again, you have to keep in mind this is a starting point, and there is a lot of room for development in this model. And it's especially, because we tested it out, we did not see the shape of the districts. We just said, let's score them and then see what the map looks like. And surprisingly enough, we were not disappointed with the model. But I do understand that we have a lot of COI models. But let me go ahead and talk about the minority majority district. So right now we were looking at total population to come up with minority majority population. And that, in the case of County of Los Angeles, is going to be primarily Latino districts. So here we said, if all 5 districts, somebody tries to make them, that's not a good thing. So we give them a lower score. And if there are, like, if somebody is trying to make 4 districts, that's also not so cool. But if 3 seems to be like, okay, that's a good one. And if there are 2, then that probably is the best, and 1 gets a lower score because with the population, with the Latino population there, you can definitely create 2 minority districts. So that was the logic that went behind, and we looked at total population. We can look at CVAP. That's something that, you know, if you think that's important, we can do that. But that is the model that we chose rather than going a straight line, you know, 5, 4, 3, 1. We said, looking at the population, you could have so many minority majority districts. So, but you can tell us, you know, what you think, and we can adjust the model. Does that answer your question, commissioners? Syra Soto and
Orpinel Segura.
Thank you, Preeti.
Okay. What else do we have? What are remaining?
Can I ask Priti just a clarification about what you just said about the majority minority districts? So did you? It's not in front of me. So what is the ideal number of minority districts? Is it 2 or 3?
Based on the population of Los Angeles County, Latinos are right now 49%.
So
I think she had the maximum points for 3 Latino majority districts, right?
Okay.
And
can I request that I think we do have to consider CVAP and you know the total population and CVAP. Could you add the CVAP as one of the factors to your criteria?
But CVAP for minority majority population, right?
Correct. Because I don't know if you just using total population, because when you look at the CVAP, it decreases it so much would count. So I would like it to be included.
Gayla, what is the next or what remains on our agenda? So
in some ways we've overlapped a little bit. Whoops, let me go back up here. We've overlapped on agenda item 4 and C because we've gone into some of the discussion about directions for ArcBridge, which sort of tied in with the discussion on the evaluation and item 4A when she started to present them. I would like to suggest, because you've been meeting since 6:30, that we sort of talk about the commissioners taking some time to look at the maps that have been submitted, to think about which ones you find particularly attractive, that ArcBridge proceed with this evaluation. And I think everybody found the examples that she gave with the total population, the CVAP, the ethnicity broken down, that was a very useful reference tool for you all to know what's happening with the maps. When you all come back together tomorrow, we need to really delve into the actual maps. The goal was to really try to pick your preferred maps by Thursday evening, if doable. You may need some of the people who prepared the maps to come in and give brief presentations. And if that's the case, come tomorrow, we should identify what that list might be to help consolidate your thinking about which maps you want to put forth. So everyone willing to do some homework and go to the hub and look at them tomorrow?
I think it's essential that we each do that. As Commissioner Cetra said, it's taking us a long time to get to the actual maps, and we really need to be getting in there and doing that. I think it would be useful though, and I don't know if there's consensus on this, but I think it would be useful if there's some grouping that could be done. And in addition to everything else Pretty is doing, if she could have some groupings of maps for us to consider, I think it'd be useful.
Is our question, is our working group still doing something besides with the maps, besides this whole holistic, all commissioners reviewing the map, or not?
So Commissioner Mendoza, you all had chosen the option that you all wanted to do this process as a full commission. So the working group is no longer involved.
I thought we selected option B, not C.
You all selected the option for them to only do the initial analysis, but that you all wanted as a full commission to decide what the map options would be. So
Okay, that's where we're now.
unless you
Right.
direct differently for them to come back together, this is a full commission process right now.
Thank you.
There are two hands, Commissioner Stetcher, then Commissioner Kenny.
Thank you. I'd just like to recommend that each person come back tomorrow night with one or two maps that they would like to recommend that we look at and consider the strengths and weaknesses. Hopefully, ArcBridge will be able to give us some quantitative measure of the quality of those maps. But we can begin to talk about what's really important in terms of what communities we capture, how similar maps are to ones we're familiar with, things like that.
Commissioner Kenny.
I would like to request ArcBridge to group the maps according to certain criteria, like keep San Fernando Valley whole, keep San Gabriel Valley whole. I would like some of the commissioners who are more familiar with the center city and maybe the Harbor Gateway area to maybe suggest approaches to the maps that would preserve the communities in those areas. Just trying to get us to over the finish line somehow.
Commissioner Wong.
Yes, so thank you. So, I know that we have been talking about, only having 3 semifinal maps or 3 public maps, given that we have over 24 maps. I know personally, as I've kind of reviewed all of the maps, it's going to be hard for me to just choose 1 or 2, let alone anyway, for us to come up with decisions on even 3 together. So I'm trying to think of a way. I thought that what Pretty did in terms of giving us kind of a quantifying certain aspects of the maps, and it was going to do that for all of the maps. That was, it's helpful for me to see how she did it for the first 7. If we had to come up tomorrow with only 1 or 2 without that information, I mean, I have looked at all the maps and I have tried to do that. It would take me all night to do, or even more. I don't know if I could come tomorrow with just 1 or 2 recommendations is what I'm saying. And that's why I asked in the beginning what the process was, because Pretty was sharing at least the first 7 maps. And if the process was that she was going to do that for all 24 maps, I guess, and that would take time. So, I guess I have clarification about, what Pretty is going to do. And then if we're going to come up with 1 or 2 each without that information, then what is the purpose of her doing it any further?
So one point of clarification, there's nothing magical about 3 options or 4 options. I mean, it's up to you to decide what you think might be the most interesting options to put forth. And typically in public policy, given that these maps are going to go through iterations, to the point that's been raised by Commissioner Stetcher and others, and Co-Chair Maeda, there may be ways to group maps. And you would look at all of those that might have to do with keeping the San Gabriel Valley whole, for example. And from those, maybe based on the point system, Pretty's rating might show that a couple of them are higher up, and you as a group will look at them more closely. I'm encouraging you all to look at them because I think you know your community so well. You've listened to hundreds of public hearing input. The current configuration. I think you will be able to identify some, and I don't want to limit you to two, Commissioner Wong, but I think you're going to identify some that you say, you know what, this one is worth further exploration. And you're likely to see some others where you say, I'm not too sure. And it would be interesting when you all come back together, if we sort of shared which ones were either one end of the spectrum or the others that people liked, because there might be some commonality that could bring more focus. And it is a bit of a bottom up, top down. I mean, Pretty's proposing to give you some quantitative metrics, but you also have to bring your professional judgment to bear.
And also, if there are maps that you think, I'm not sure I understand what's going on, but it's interesting, I want to hear from them. Bring that as well, and we could consider possibly inviting some folks to give input, present their maps.
I'm also somewhat aware that you may sort of say, I like these pieces of these three maps, and you might direct ArcBridge as one of your options to do a hybrid combination of them, a synthesis of them. We want you to think about the best thinking you come across.
Okay, so can you provide, I guess it's still not clear to me. So will Pretty present that information that she did for the first 7 for the additional 17, or are we going to skip that and go ahead and talk about individual maps without that information?
So I have to defer to Pretty. We had asked her to go as far as she could in doing the analysis. Pretty, where are you at in terms of all of the maps?
What I would say, in the interest of time, that all the information is there on the hub. And if there is any particular one that you would like to get details, but by looking at it, or maybe if you would like to see, then you could tell us, because just look at the time, we hardly have any time. And as you can see, some of the maps may not even make the cut. So I would say you take a look at the hub and see the ones that you would like to get details about, and let me know, and we'll do our best to get the information that you need.
Pretty, another more objective way is if you do the scoring, and at least you gave the CVAP and ethnic breakdowns for the maps that rank among the top 5 or top 6 based on your score, that might be a worthwhile starting point.
Absolutely.
Being contacted by commissioners, look at this one, because tomorrow they need to see the analysis that you have.
Can you rate all of the existing maps prior to our meeting tomorrow night?
I have actually done about 20. So we have made now, we would have to, based on your feedback, we would have to adjust the model a bit and rerun it. So, but we have collected the data. And if you think we are going to look at summing up the Polsby-Popper numbers to see how that would impact the score. So yeah, we could do the changes, but once again, you are the commissioners. You let us know what you think.
Well, I think you're hearing that it would be useful. The commissioners feel it'd be useful to have those kind of quantitative numbers.
And then maybe you could pick the highest ranking ones to
Yeah.
provide the greater detail with. And then for those that do not have the detailed analysis, you could open up the hub in the meetings, and then the commissioners can look more closely at the borders and what's going on. But we really need to now roll up our sleeves and get that work done. Co-Chair Maeda,
Yes.
we sort of summarize these next steps and then maybe move on to the agenda item, because I am very cognizant of the fact that folks have not had a break and we don't want to keep them too much longer.
That, and some people may want to go do the map reviewing now. Yeah, so unless there's an objection, we will just not vote on anything at this point. Just we've given some direction to Preeti now with regards to her chart, her analysis. She's going to try to refine it, come up with full scores for whatever maps are submitted. Bring those. The commissioners are going to do what they can to review the maps on their own, come with a couple of ones or 2 or 3 or 4 that they want to really dig into, perhaps have presentations from the presenters or the authors, and get into the maps more tomorrow. I think that's pretty much my summary. Did I miss anything?
And let me also add that when you go into your public hearings, you've had, let's say, 4 map options. They're going to change during the month of November based on further input from the public. And you'll have time for further refinement of them. So do not feel like you have to come up with what will be the map in December 15th.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to ease some of that pressure, but I do think it would be good to give the public some interesting options to consider and weigh in on. Just as the COI models A, B, and C had different models that people could react to and say, I sort of like C better than B or whatever. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move on, if that's okay with you, Co-Chair Maeda.
Yes.
So we have 2 public comments on this agenda item.
Okay.
Which agenda item are we talking about? 4C?
4D.
Did we get to 4D? I didn't think we actually did get to 4D.
No,
4D, we sort of covered. Yeah.
we actually did not get to 4D. We've covered sort of the direction in 4C, and I think based on what I'm hearing about the timing is that 4D you just shouldn't pick it up, and that agenda item remains on tomorrow's agenda as well. So I think given the timing and the feedback, we're not at 4D, and I recommend you not take it up. You just continue it.
Yeah, I agree. And we did close public comment at 4C already. So let's move on to the staff report, Gayla.
Okay. So I'm always reminding the commission and the public of the timeline. You are now in the last week where you need to come up with the map options. We will post it for 7 days, and then we'll have the public hearings during the month of November. They will spill into the first week in December, most likely, and then the final map will be drawn on December 15th. Commissioners, you all got a doodle survey to let me know of dates in November that you are available for public hearings. Some of you haven't completed it. Some of you look like you picked some dates, but it left a lot of blanks. So I really would like you to fill in all dates that could possibly work so we could get a quorum. Right now, what we're leaning toward proposing is that we have our first public hearing as soon after the 7-day posting as possible, so that 30 days countdown can begin. Because I want to give you the maximum time in December to deliberate on the final map. So that first date's very important. I've asked you to block out Wednesday evenings for the subsequent public hearings. We'll see how many we need. It's possible that there'll be a lot of interest and you'll need to do more, but I think we're looking at maybe 4, no more than 5 public hearings. Yes, Commissioner Bento.
Hey, Gayla, thank you so much. I tried to redo the survey, and for whatever reason, it was locking me out. I don't know.
Because you completed it, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, yes, I did. So, I mean, I'm happy to play around with it again if you want me to, or I can send you the times. I can email you times that I'm available.
Why don't you do that?
Or I'll add the
Great
times
idea.
that I'm available. Okay.
Great idea.
Okay. Or you can use a generic link, maybe, and get in that way. So again, this is just reminding you about Wednesday evenings in November. I don't think we should do Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and that we will be meeting tomorrow night and Thursday night starting at 6:30. We are targeting the public hearings for 7 o'clock because I know the 6:30 start time has been a hardship for a number of the commissioners. And we will be deciding on Thursday, the 28th, whether or not you extend the resolution to have virtual or hybrid options going into November. And that's it.
And just a clarification, we can do that at a special meeting. Is that right?
That is
Yes,
correct.
Great.
That's correct.
Excellent.
and it's already on the posted agenda.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you, everybody, the public and commissioners, for hanging in there. It is 9:47 or 46, and we will be back at 6:30 tomorrow evening virtually. And thank you for doing the homework between now and then.
Have a good evening.
We're
Bye,
adjourned.
everyone.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.